I am so fascinated by the concept of the literary magazine and the idea that we're you're prioritizing and you're looking for unfinished fragments and pieces that are multidisciplinary. And I'm just I would love to hear more about how that became the spark for the magazine and the kinds of things you're looking for and how even your own and work might inform this initiative.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, there's a lot of different threads that kind of have morphed this project from even what I originally kind of imagined with the help of the folks on the editorial team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the first kind of spark, I've always wanted to start a literary magazine. I'm not sure where that really came from, besides just that I love to read them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always loved, particularly reading like anthologies and bringing together different voices on a common theme, but seeing how each of those people kind of refract that theme through their own experiences. Um, so when thinking of starting this literary magazine, I I had already had the word kaleidoscoped in my mind, and that honestly, it's almost like the title was kind of what led a lot of the fragmentary refracting kind of idea of the project. Weirdly enough, I feel like it usually happens the opposite way. Um, but the word kaleidoscoped, I just find, well, it's kind of a word I made up. Kaleidoscope obviously is a word, but to turn it into an adjective or even into a verb, to kaleidoscope, I thought was really interesting. And I guess for me, that really connects to this time. I hate to say words like this moment or this time because it feels like a euphemism that really collapses the complexity of right now. But anyways, um, so in thinking about that as a guiding kind of factor for the magazine, I was thinking about how, again, how just bringing together various different voices is already a type of refracting, a way to, I don't know, kind of have this shifting lens on of experiences that all come together into one place and can actually layer and create another story by their layering, by their coming together, rather than just being separate voices apart. Um, but also because since the start of the pandemic, I feel fragmented myself. I feel so split off from my writing community that I have worked so hard to really like cultivate and foster and being in the writing program at UCSD. And also this wording of returning to normal, of going back to normal, that always rubbed me the wrong way, because it felt like an erasure of the circumstances of that were normal to us, that led to the pandemic, that led to Black Lives Matter, that led to this uprising, and that led to Trump being president. All of these, so much rhetoric around going back to normal that kind of collapsed all of these different facets. And that always felt, like I said, just an erasure and like a resistance to reckoning with like what led us to now.
Mm-hmm.
And so in thinking about how that might come together in a literary magazine, I really wanted to challenge that idea of what is normal and what going back to normal would mean, and kind of, resist that that's even a possibility or something we should want.
Please tell me a little bit about your editorial board members, because I think it's important that we mention their names too as this project has been developing. Absolutely.
So they all just volunteered to be a part of this, and I'm so grateful because they have both, one, I couldn't do it without them, and two, they really pushed, complicated and pushed these thoughts that I had even further, and have been really essential in thinking through, having this idea of whose voices we're going to center in the project, but then thinking about like the praxis of how we actually do that, and balancing, you know, wanting to center voices that have not historically been prioritized or even heard in academic and commercial publishing, but not tokenizing folks either because of their identities. So that's a really difficult thing to balance that we've all, you know, and me being a white person having these conversations, I absolutely value, you know, that input from other folks that I don't always get to on my own.
The beautiful thing about the image of the kaleidoscope is that it's a lot of sharp edges that create a new framework and a new um, paradigm. So I'm just fascinated by what kinds of submissions are you getting? How is the process going at this point?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we received about 144 submissions, which is pretty great for an absolutely new magazine, because it can be really difficult to kind of cross that threshold to just have people be aware of you. In terms of my community of the people in my program and how they've responded to this project, well, one thing is that I should say too that the folks on the editorial board really were the ones that kind of pushed the theme idea from this idea, you know, thinking about, we were thinking about pre-existing conditions um, and how, and challenging this idea of going back to normal, and how we were all having difficulty writing about the pandemic and also writing at all, and just feeling that kind of stuck place where it's hard to finish anything. And that's kind of where that idea came from, is this fragmented, scattered feeling that we're in, and how that's showing up in our own work. And so wanting to make a place where we can honor that in other people. Um, and and also how that idea of something never being finished feels true even before the pandemic. In all writing, there's kind of a lot of sayings about that, that you know, that a finished piece of writing isn't finished, it's abandoned.
Ah,
And yeah, doesn't that just feel true? I don't know your
I,
relationship to writing, but um
well,
yeah.
I can say as a singer, I mean, that's what I do. I'm a professional singer and I teach singing. And of course, we make sounds in air.
Mm-hmm.
So they are in the moment and that's the experience. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't, you can't capture them. I don't know if they're abandoned, but they're lost. They're lost in the
Yeah.
wind, you know. So I'm glad we're having this conversation because in this arts and community engagement initiative, it's a new initiative. Some of the things that we had planned, of course, were canceled because of the pandemic, but you know, we are dedicated to seeing it flower and flourish as we can in the circumstances that we have. So great to know that you know, this project that is absolutely worthy of support can be highlighted and on the radar, and hopefully bring other people into knowing about it and supporting it. I wanted to ask one final thing. I noticed that on your website you have no cost for submission, which is fantastic, but you do ask people if they might like to contribute to a group called Native Like Water. Can you talk? That's I just looked at their website this morning. It looks like a beautiful group. Can you tell us a little bit about that group and why uh, you chose to highlight them as part of your project?
So basically we were thinking, well, if we have you know, we have this funding to be able to pay ourselves and pay contributors, and the graphic designer, and, you know, everyone pay for the domain page, you know, on online, that instead of asking for those donations, because a lot of folks are used to paying a reading fee anyways, we thought, okay, let's try to redirect that so that, you know, folks who can't pay it don't have to, but someone who would be able to and is used to doing that might say like, oh, okay, well, if I'm not going to pay this $5 here, but I was planning on it, then maybe I can direct this somewhere else. So we thought about who we might highlight in doing that. And again, this was definitely a decision that my editorial board was a huge part of. But we thought, you know, being benefiting from UCSD and having a fellowship that's coming from that institution, you know, the most direct person that we could like funnel that to, you know, thinking about it not necessarily as donation, but as reparations. We thought about supporting an Indigenous group in our own community in San Diego, which would be the Kumeyaay Nation. So we did a little research and thinking about who, you know, there's lots of different organizations that support the Kumeyaay, and particularly thinking of something Kumeyaay led. But I also, to kind of, you know, make that not just a performative thing, but actually have a stake in it, we are donating a little bit of the funds that we received for the fellowship to them as well, so that we have a clear kind of commitment to that.
Well, Becca, this has just been an amazing conversation. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we kind of bring it to a close? I mean, this is I am so thrilled to meet you and so happy
Yeah.
with what you're doing, and just, you know, anything that we can do to try to support you and get the word out and let people know about the magazine, and hopefully find ways to sustain it. You know, we, we we will do. So, but anything else you want to tell us about the magazine before we?
Um, I guess just, I'm not sure. I guess just thank you again for making, you know, making that possible. I think, you know, it's always been, like I said, it's always been an idea in my mind to start a literary magazine. But I don't think, I definitely wouldn't have done it right now if it wasn't for the fellowship opportunity. When I first saw that back in May, you know, that was what sparked me to think, oh, like I've had this project in my mind and now I could actually do it. Um, I definitely wouldn't have done it in the middle of a pandemic, when, you know, I'm already just struggling to stay on top of my teaching and teaching responsibilities and course load. But I'm so glad that I'm so glad that I've had this to do, because it's just been a real source of joy. It's been a lot of work and labor, absolutely, but it's really, it's not often you get to do a project within the structures of academia that really is something that you're doing just because you're passionate about it. And to have other folks, you know, in my program be also passionate about it and willing to give their time to do that. Really, their involvement started from just being excited about the project too. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.